I got some information for you, okay? On this section of rational gaze, this tiny little section, never repeats, you never hear it again, but it's so good. I just want to sink my teeth into this one. So we're looking at a riff that happens over 32 beats, but the riff is divided up, we're going to say it's divided up into 3 major divisions. There we go, right? 32 divided by 3, if you want to look at it that way. So how are we dividing it by 3? Well, the seed of the riff is 12.5 beats long. So that sounds like this. 3, 4. That's 12 and a half beats long. So what happens to a riff that's 12 and a half beats long? Well, it means that when we repeat the riff, it happens on an upbeat because it starts on a downbeat. So the second time it happens on an upbeat. It's the exact same riff, just on an upbeat. Sounds totally different that way. But what do we get when we add 12.5 plus 12.5? We only get 25. But we're talking about 32 beat phrases. We're talking about numbers divisible by 4. So how are we going to finish the phrase? We have 7 beats to go. Well, what is beat 25 but beat 2 of the 7th measure of the phrase? So we have 7 more beats to get to 32. How are we going to add those up? Well, we're going to take that initial 12.5 cycle and we're going to chop off 5.5 beats of it to leave us with 7 beats. And that's going to bring us to the end. So when I say that 32 is divided by 3, what I'm really saying is 12.5, 12.5 plus 7. That gets us to 32. So what does the 7 sound like? Well, it starts on beat 2, so it's 1. That's it. And then we're back. And that repeats. So the phrase is 32 beats, but it repeats 1 time. So we have a total of 64 beats of this epic riff. All right, let me know if that makes sense. Let me know in the comments if I'm literally just babbling nonsense right now or if I'm helping you. Let's talk about the harmony on this one, okay? So on top of that riff, we have a melody that's only 2 notes. 2, 2, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2. That's it. So that repeats. So that's a symmetrical melody. That melody is divisible by 4, but the riff isn't. So the relationship to the riff, the relationship from the riff to the melody is constantly changing. That is the beauty of Meshuggah. That's what happens when you come up with an odd riff and you have a symmetrical melody. It's the same idea of playing an odd riff against a 4/4 backbeat. You're gonna have these like weird little turnarounds, these interesting little syncopations. And what's even better is when you have a melody, you're reharmonizing the melody with the same riff, but in a different part of the measure. That is the genius of Meshuggah. And this is a perfect example of that. Happens so much throughout their music, but this is a really, really ideal example to explain. So let's get into the harmony. So that first note, that's a D. That note is a D. Okay, so how are we going to even figure out what scales might go with that? Well, I'm going to look at the bass line. I'm going to see that the bass line is made up of F, F sharp, G, G sharp. And if I have D in the top, how can I draw a relationship there? Well, here's where my brain finds me at, is I'm seeing an E7 chord and the D is the flat 7th of the chord. Why am I seeing an E7 chord? Because F is the flat 9, F sharp is the natural 9, G is the sharp 9, and G sharp is the major 3rd. Those notes all work against an E dominant 7 tonality. They're the altered notes. Well, the F sharp is not an altered note, but that chromaticism implies a sort of dissonant alteration. So that's how I'm getting that. So once I go from D to C sharp, what do I hear when I hear that C sharp? I'm thinking of a 5-1 progression. Now, if you've not really checked out the cycle of fourth concept, this is what that is. There's this concept in music, 5-1. 5-1 is basically tension, release. 5 is tension, 1 is release. That's how music works. It's always tension, release. So our tension is E7. Our release is A major 7. That's how I'm thinking of this. That's how I'm going to improvise. But there's one layer deeper than that. I'm also thinking over A major 7. I'm also thinking E flat major 7. This is what we refer to as a tritone substitution. So when we have A major, all of the notes in E flat major are going to work for our resolution chord. They're gonna sound a bit dissonant, but that's the name of the game here. We're playing Meshuggah. We're trying to find those dissonant relationships. So whenever I think of a 5-1, I'm thinking my 5 chord is going to go up a fourth to the 1 chord, and that's gonna be my tension and release. Or I'm thinking my 5 chord is going to descend a half step, and that is my tension and release. Tension being the 5 chord, release being down a half step or a tritone away from the note that is a fourth up from the 5 chord. So what that would sound like, all right, let me just improvise on this E7, and I'm gonna bring it down to an A major 7 at first, and then I'll do it down to E flat.